What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'd like to touch on comparing buying land with all the stuff included and raw land with none of the stuff included. I just purchased land about 3 or 4 months ago, and I basically manifested my perfect land. I personally wanted my land all built up already so that I didn't have to do certain things. So let's get started. Now, a little bit about my land that I manifested. It had a mobile home on it, which had 2 bedrooms, a huge living room, a kitchen, a little laundry area, and a bathroom. It had a barn with a lean-to, so the barn is kind of like a shed workshop type thing, and then the lean-to was open when I first purchased this. It had all the utilities installed on the big house. That was electric, septic, and water. The land itself, which was about 4 acres, it was all mowed down except for trees in the middle. There was no woods or anything like that to cut down to form a space for me to live in. Now, a little bit about my specific vision. I wanted a shed conversion to bring onto my property that I could move my business office out of my tiny house and into a bigger workspace. I had expanded, added a bunch to my business, so the office in the tiny house was kind of outgrowing itself and I needed a bigger space. If the land that I purchased didn't already have an extra space for me to make into that work office, then I was going to have to bring another type of building to come on and do it that way. Cost for that would have been about $7,000 or $8,000 to bring a shed conversion on, and that's just the shell. And then I would have had to spend another $7,000 or $8,000 getting the inside done just to make my business office. So because my property had a mobile home on it, I decided to make this whole entire mobile home into a half work and half guest house. The guest house was just going to be another shed conversion that I had to bring on. So again, we're going to have to do another $7,000 or $8,000 to bring on a shed conversion to make a guest house, and then another $11,000 to build up the inside because all they give you is a shell. Another one of those shed conversions was going to be a workshop. I wanted a huge workshop, just as I had in the campground. I had a shed built, but this time, because I was buying my own land, I wanted a bigger workshop, a bigger garage for me to work on projects, say around the homestead. Cost for this one would probably be a lot more considering it's a bigger building. Thank goodness that this land had a workshop already on it. This also includes the lean-to that was connected to the garage. Instead of me having to bring a chicken coop or build a chicken coop on my land, I basically closed that section off so that I could have a chicken coop, and it was already there. Okay, so let's get into the comparison. So number one, it costs less money if you buy all of the stuff already on the property than having to build up the property from scratch. If you build the property from scratch, you'll probably spend less on the land, but you probably will pay more money in bringing all of those conversions or shed conversions on, depending on what you want. Now, everybody's dream is going to be different. I'm only using these as comparison for my dream and the fact that I was blessed with all of these buildings already on here, and me comparing my own dream. If I didn't have the buildings, all of them would have had to been brought on, and I think I would have ended up paying double in the end. Now, mind you, all the properties aren't going to be like this one. You might find a house on a land, all of the utilities installed and a garage, but it might be $150,000. Depends on the area that you're looking. Number two, all the utilities are installed if it's all built up, but you have to put them in if it's raw land. Now, again, if the land is already built up, imagine how much money those previous owners had to spend to put utilities in the ground. This includes either digging a well or getting water from the city dug from wherever their source is to your house or the houses that are on the property. Electric, if the electric isn't in the air already, then you're going to have to pay per foot to get it from the street to wherever your house is. And lastly, septic. If you don't have a septic installed or a sewer installed already, you're going to have to pay all of that money just to have them come and dig out a space for you to do that. In my opinion, in the long run, if you buy the raw land and you need all of these things according to zoning, you're going to have to spend a lot more money doing it that way. Now to compare, if you are buying raw land, you can put your utilities anywhere. You can mow down whatever trees you want. You can build it up the way you want. You have a clear palette as to where you're going to place everything, your tiny house, any extra buildings, your utilities. It's all on you. Again, if you buy it with it already built up, you have to deal with everything where it is placed. I had to deal with everything that was in the places that it was, where the utilities were installed, where the house was placed, where the barn was placed. All I had to do was find a place to put my tiny house. In my situation, I did have to have utilities installed from the main source in the big house. And although that wasn't as much money as installing all of the utilities from scratch, at least they were here. I only had to pay a specific amount of money to get it installed underground from the big house to the small house. Number 3, if you buy land that's basically already built up and it's aesthetically pleasing, you're not going to have to mow down any of those trees in the middle to make yourself a spot to live. When I first got here, there was several scattered trees in the middle and the rest was mowed down, as if the previous owners had already built up their land to make it look beautiful. When I was looking at raw land, I noticed that there was a lot of woods in the background. I would have had to have an excavator come in with a big machine and have a whole field cleared out for me to place my tiny house, and then more of that cleared out for me to place my other buildings, a garage and my workshop. All of that would have been needed to be mowed down, and all of that cost money. Because all of mine was already mowed down, that comparison, I feel it's better to buy the built up land. But in comparing, if you want the raw land, you can place everything where you want. Sometimes people buy the raw land for less money and then they end up spending more money mowing down the land, putting in the utilities, and adding the buildings. Number 4, depending on your situation and where you choose to buy your land, built up land usually has a couple neighbors around there. It's more of an established city and community area, and that's most likely. If you buy raw land, it's usually in the middle of nowhere and there's no neighbors around, which is why there's usually no utilities already put there, because it's just a raw piece of land that's just out in the middle of nowhere. Everything still has to be done to it. If you buy your land, it's built up, you're most likely going to have a neighbor or two nearby, especially if you're in a bigger city. I remember looking at raw land that was out in the middle of the woods and the nearest neighbor was miles away. I am very grateful that I do have close by neighbors. I'm not alone in this little area that I'm in. I think I would have felt overwhelmed if I would have just been out in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors, with no utilities, with nothing around me or surrounding me. I would have felt lost just in the middle of the wood. Very grateful to have neighbors nearby, especially with this little built up area that was already there. Number 5, the town that I live in, the whole town, the city is very close. It's about 2 to 3 minutes away. Now, a lot of times this is not going to be the situation for everyone, because if you buy raw land, you might be out in the middle of nowhere. You might even be in a community where there's multiple people around. Communities usually have more stores and gas stations and things of that nature nearby, because it's easy for those people in that community to go to the town. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have any of that around, there might not be a close city. My land specifically, I am glad that I had a little town nearby. I'm in a small town to begin with, but there is a post office nearby, there's a Dollar General, the garbage dump is there, I can pay my water bill, and it's all just 2 minutes away. Number 6, there is no guesswork when it comes to your flat level land. Me specifically, I was looking for flat level land so that I can place my tiny house so that it wasn't in a flood zone. In the future, I want to build a little community here. I felt that having mowed down land already was more helpful for me. I had several places where I could put my tiny house throughout my whole acreage. I could put it over here in the front. I could have put it in the back. There are several flat level spots, but if you buy land even 5 acres and it's all woods, you have no idea where the hills are on that land. You have no idea what's underneath all of those woods until it's all excavated and mowed down. Take that into consideration if you are trying to find land to place a tiny house. If you're looking for that flat level land so that you're not in a flood zone, that really helps if it's already mowed down. Even if you buy raw land and it's got a little section that's already mowed down, At least you know there's no guesswork on all the trees that are covering all the land that you might need to use. Number 7, I am realizing that owning less acres is a lot better for me than owning more acres. Now imagine I used to want 25 acres and this was to build up a tiny house community. But because I changed my plan and I no longer want monthly renters because I don't think it's allowed here. But if I would have gotten 25 acres to do that, I would have had to care for 25 acres. Now maybe you want to build a huge community in that 25 acres that you buy, and maybe you have the money to do it, but not everyone will. Buying less land because I took away the community idea was a better option for me because that's less land that I have to maintain. Most of you guys know that I have had troubles mowing my lawn for the past few weeks. I'm still having those issues. That is a really great reason why I'm glad that I got less acres than more acres. But again, everyone's situation is different. So some people may need more acres and can handle it. Although I don't plan on making my acreage into a tiny house community, it's more going to be like for Airbnbs and for people just to stay randomly in and out. It's not going to be so much a monthly rented thing anymore. I still feel that the acreage that I bought can still be built into a little community, which is why I'm doing my xeriscaping now. Also take that into consideration according to what plan and what dream you have in the future on how much acreage you buy today. Number 8, the house, the coop, and the utilities all came in handy when I didn't have anything else. I had a huge transport problem where my tiny house couldn't be moved onto its foundation. I was very thankful that this big house was here so that I could use the utilities, use the shower, use the bathroom, and have a space for my cats and I to live while my tiny house sat on the grass over there. I'm also grateful that there was a huge workshop barn and a lean-to on that barn because I was able to put all of my storage and my outside garden stuff and my tools inside that shed. If I would have had a shed conversion brought onto my land, it probably would have taken me months to get it done, and I would have had no storage for all of that stuff. It would have probably stayed outside and I would have had to come up with some other way to store all that stuff. Built up land for me was better. If I would have bought raw land, that stuff would not have been on there. This also includes the chicken coop. Before I moved here, my friends and I had come to build up the chicken coop. If that chicken coop wasn't here, I would have had to either purchase one or build one. My chickens would not have had a place to stay until that happened. The raw land might take a lot more planning than if you have a built up land that you already bought. Number 9, my property is gorgeous. It is beautiful, it is welcoming, and it was already established by the time that I got here. The previous owners had built it up this way. Of course, they're going to try to sell it this way, and that was one of my biggest selling points, was that the acreage and the land was beautiful. This was part of my dream, to have all of this mowed down already with scattered trees in the middle. And as I keep saying all these things, I realize that I manifested them because I was saying them. If I would have found raw land, that same thing would have happened. I would have had to build it up to make it look beautiful. There's a pro and con. If you're already looking for that beautiful land and scenery and that like private oasis that you just want to be in peace and relax with, that's what I wanted on my property. And I'm so glad that I didn't have to do all the raw land stuff, because it would have just been a lot more money, a lot more time, a lot more effort, work, thinking about it, planning. I'm just really glad that it looks as beautiful as it does. Like seriously, it is breathtakingly beautiful here. When I do make it into a little Airbnb community, half the work is done for me and I just have to continue the xeriscaping in order to make it just a little bit better. And lastly, number 10, although a slight bit of a con, because the land was already built up, there were older buildings on the land. Bugs and insects, wasps, hornets, yellow jackets were able to build their nests inside these older buildings. Whereas if you had raw land and you brought on new buildings, none of that stuff would happen. I am paying more money in pest control, fixing all of the things that the previous owners had done, as opposed to buying raw land and building it up myself and having everything start from scratch. When a shed conversion comes on, there's not going to be any carpenter bees making their way into your house until later on. When I came here, they had done everything they could to try to deter the carpenter bees. I'm grateful that they had started the process, but there's mold in the garage, there was mold in the house, and all of these things I had to take care of because the buildings were already here. Again, when you're finding your land, take into consideration all of these repairs that might need to be done if these buildings are on there. If they're not, you can do whatever you want. You might have to end up paying more money, but in the long run, for me, my dream was to have all of this already on here. I'm kind of handling all of the problems that are coming with it as I go. Owning your own property and land is hard no matter if you have it built up or if you buy raw land. I'm just doing the comparisons of what it's like to buy land already built up or raw land. Now, I haven't bought the raw land, but I can imagine that all of that stuff would have had to happen because I know what I'm doing here with all of the stuff that I have here. I can imagine what I would have to do with raw land and have to build it all up. All the money that it would take, all the time and effort, all the planning, and all of that stuff I just didn't want to do. Some people do, and everyone's dreams are different. If you guys like this video and you thought it was helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and click the notifications bell so you can receive a notification every time I post a new video, which is every Sunday. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And we'll get into the more of that into the don't put that. So the tiny house, don't put that. And even have like a nearby, don't put that. So if there was woods in my area, don't put that. But right now I'm by myself and I don't have. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you're continuing to enjoy. Don't put that. Number 10, don't put that. When I got my property, don't put that. Half of the mobile home was, don't put that. The utilities were installed, so I am very glad that I chose somewhere in a blah. There is no guesswork when it comes to, don't put that. I needed something already mowed down, and if I felt I already, don't put that. I'm also grateful that the lean-to was on the shed, don't put that.